Introducing the Bite Me Cannabis Club. The Bite Me Cannabis Club aims to be an inclusive online space for cannabis lovers. Whether you're simply curious about how cannabis can improve your life or you're fully seasoned, there's always more to learn. When you join the Bite Me Cannabis Club, you'll have access to like-minded people interested in cannabis, monthly workshops, live Q&As, recipes and recipe swaps, digital cookbooks, fully functional chat feature, and a whole lot more. For a limited time, it's only $5 a month with a 30-day free trial so you can try it out and see if it's right for you. This isn't just another Facebook group or confusing Discord channel. I carefully chose a platform that offers a clear, uncluttered, and seamless community experience. See for yourself, join today, say hello. I can't wait to connect with you there. Join the Bite Me Cannabis Club today. Link in your podcast app. And we're back, friends, for episode 233. And in this one, we are talking about the future of cannabis edibles as envisioned by ChatGPT and myself. Stay tuned. Welcome to Bite Me, the show about edibles, where I help you take control of your high life. I'm your host and certified Ganjier Marge, and I love helping cooks make safe and effective edibles at home. I'm so glad you're here, and thank you for joining me today. Welcome back, friends. I'm really glad you're here for yet another episode. This is episode 233, and I feel like sometimes I really need to talk a bit more about that because sometimes I still can't believe that when I picked up this microphone 4.5 years ago that I'd be here for episode 233. It's kind of mind-boggling a little bit. You may be wondering, but Marge, why are you talking about the future of cannabis as envisioned by ChatGPT and yourself? And what gives you the credence to do such a thing? Well, to be honest, I'm just one lady with an opinion. And as we all know, opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one. So you can take it with a grain of salt, of course. But I am somebody who does spend an inordinate amount of time making, eating, enjoying edibles, and paying attention to the industry, even though I'm not directly involved in it, which gives me a pretty unique perspective, I think. I do talk to a lot of people who are directly involved in the cannabis edibles industry, but I myself am a bit of an outlier. It's a place I like to be honest, because it gives me a certain sense of freedom. I'm not beholden to anybody. So there is that. But the other reason is actually because I had a recipe prepared. I made a bunch of recipes a couple weeks ago because I knew I'd also be going to Saskatchewan for a week to visit some friends, which I did. It was a wonderful time. And that's probably why I got the question quite often, why are you going to Saskatoon in January? And because it was worth it to see friends, even though it was cold as fuck. I mean, I got off the plane and I think it was minus 45 degrees Celsius. And let me tell you, my entire bag was packed with long underwear, thermals, snow pants, and the bulkiest sweaters I could possibly cram in there. It was a small miracle that I was able to cram in as much as I did, but it was worth it. And, you know, as a Canadian, I'm pretty used to the cold weather, not typically that cold, but I can adapt because I'm Canadian, but I digress. So the recipe that I had prepared for right after I came back, I was kind of like, it was good, but it wasn't where I wanted it to be, if you will. And as far as an infused recipe goes, so I'm going to try it out again, I think in the near future, maybe do a little tweaking and see, because it was unique. And if you like onions, you would like this. And maybe it's not as traditionally as favorited as some of the other ones. I noticed the gingery beet soup, stats wise, did not do as well as some of my other episodes have. But you know, at the end of the day, I make what I want. It's my show. So I do what I want. And a lot of you folks just join for the ride and you can pick and choose what recipes really speak to you. So that's the beauty of being a small independent podcaster. I get to do what I want. Now, as a result, I was kind of like, well, what should I talk about this week? And I was looking for some ideas. I have a whole bunch of recipes planned. I'm going to be making some, and I have some that I've already made and I really enjoyed. I'll probably be making them for a second time around. So I have a lot of recipes upcoming that I'm excited about. But I thought I would take to ChatGPT and ask what it thought the future of cannabis was going to look like. Because we're integrating these tools so much into our lives every day. And this technology came out onto the scene in, when was it? Late 20 2022, I think, when first ChatGPT came onto the scene, and now it's in like every single tool that I use in podcasting. And I'm sure whatever work you're doing, AI is being incorporated into everything that you're doing as well. And it's sort of like, what's it going to look like in 5 years? It's kind of mind blowing. I saw something recently where there was an app that's been created that will it's an app for your phone, and it was AI enabled, and it would allow you to take a picture of a big pile of Legos. And from that pile, it could tell you what you could make with those Legos. And it wasn't a short list. I mean, I guess it might depend, of course, on the size of the pile that you have, but it told you what you can make with it, how to make them, and then would also go and point out where those pieces were in your pile of Lego. If that's AI technology, I'm here for it. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this week's episode, let's talk a little bit about some reviews, because I got my first 1-star review. And sometimes I think, folks, that means I've made it. Oh, wait a second. I've made it, of course, before that, because of people like you who are listening right now. So 1-star reviews be damned. Thank you for being here. I don't know if I was able to spit that out earlier. If you're joining me for the first time, I hope you enjoy it and it's intriguing enough for you to listen to some of the back episodes in the catalog, or stay tuned for future episodes. And if you've been following me for a while, I appreciate you. I don't know if that ever really comes across clearly enough in this audio format when you can't see my face, but I really do appreciate it, because I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for people listening. Because, obviously if no one's listening, then there's really no point to doing this. You're just talking to yourself at that point, and that's when you start to look a little crazy. But thank you. Thank you for being here and making this possible. So I got my first 1-star review. I was so excited. I got an email saying that, hey, you've got a new review. And I open it up and it's 1 star, and from a fellow Canuck to boot. Or is it to boot? Oh, I don't know. I don't talk like that anyway. I don't think I do anyway. Ouch. It was like, what the fuck? And I read the content of the review, and I was like, this has nothing to do with my show, but it was a personal attack on a guest that I had a while back, like episode 70s, in the 70s. And I'm not going to comment on what went on between this anonymous reviewer and the guest chef working in an unnamed restaurant in an unnamed place at an unknown period of time. But what I can ask, if you're going to leave a review, please at least let it be relevant and also kind. Maybe this chef did act poorly at some point in his life. Who hasn't? Haven't we all done things that we regret, but we're lucky that there wasn't a cell phone in sight to capture it? I think of you, my fellow Gen Xers, who were able to pull off a lot of shit and nobody was ever the wiser. Sometimes I feel very grateful for the time in which I grew up. But luckily for me, Apple's removing the review because it was so clearly not relevant to the content of the show. But I do have 2 takeaways from this. And one is, first and foremost, be kind to each other. We're all looking for connection and community. And most of us are dealing with hard things because life is hard. And those hard things are going to be different for everybody, but it doesn't make it any less relevant to the person who's having to deal with them. So be kind. And 2 is more of a shameless plug. If you feel so compelled, please leave a 5-star rating and review so that more edibles lovers like you and I can find the show on our little corner of the internet that we're sharing together. And if you want some community, why not consider joining the Bite Me Cannabis Club too? So that's my takeaway from my first 1-star review. Now, before we get into it as well, I almost forgot the stoner trivia. And I'm pulling it out of the box right now as we speak because I didn't think of it ahead of time when I was writing my show notes out. I'm going to take a card from the middle of the deck. If you're listening to this, that's what I'm doing right now. Putting the deck back down on my desk. And what have we got here for stoner trivia this week? Oh, this is a history question worth 50 points if you're keeping track. In 1986, Carlton Turner, President Reagan's drug advisor, suggested that marijuana could make you dumb, sterile, gay, or crazy. And I'll reveal the answer at the end of this episode, so you won't have to wait for too long to find out the answer. What was suggested marijuana could make you? Dumb, sterile, gay, or crazy? So let's get into this week's subject matter, shall we? The future of cannabis cuisine, according to ChatGPT. I thought it would be interesting to ask it sort of what it thought the future of cannabis edibles specifically was going to look like, because I don't know, like I was saying at the outset of this episode, it is something that is becoming pretty relevant in our lives right now in very small and meaningful ways, but we're utilizing these AI tools more and more, and they have some insights or ways of looking at things we might not have considered. Obviously, there's a lot of issues with AI yet that we need to look at or examine, but it does make life easier in many ways. So this is what it had to say. And then it came up with 10 points. So the future of cannabis cuisine is poised to be an exciting and dynamic field influenced by several key factors, including evolving legal landscapes, culinary innovation, consumer preferences, and technological advancements. Here's a closer look at these elements and how they might shape the future of cannabis-infused foods. And then it went on to give 10 specific points, which I thought was quite well done. Thank you, ChatGPT. The first one was widening legalization and regulation. As more regions legalize cannabis for medical and recreational use, the market for cannabis cuisine will likely expand. This will encourage more chefs and food businesses to explore and innovate in this space, leading to a broader acceptance and normalization of cannabis in everyday cuisine. I mean, that's a nice thought. I do feel like the widening legalization regulation is going to help, but it's also a very slow process. I'm in Canada. We've had legalization for over 5 years now, and we still don't have cannabis edibles stronger than 10 milligrams per package. There's still no cannabis lounges or places where you can buy freshly infused foods. And a lot of cannabis dinners are still kind of underground or skirting loopholes that allow people to host these things in certain parameters. So this is going to probably take longer than we think. And of course, widening legalization regulation needs to happen on a far more widespread. It would be nice if Canada wasn't one of the few places where cannabis is legal. And usually the policy framework that surrounds it is so heavy-handed that it really doesn't encourage a lot of this yet. That doesn't mean things are going to change, but I find change is always so fucking slow. Infused dinners, fresh edibles options in dispensaries and food service operations. What I would love to see is, say, food sales at farmers markets. So some, Farmer Joe or Farmer Mary Jane or whatever is making cookies from the weed they grew at their farm, and then they're, bringing them to the market. I would buy that. Why not? I want to support local makers. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. But I go to farmers markets for tomatoes. Why can't I pick up a little weed or edibles there too? And it just so happens I have a friend in my town who is hosting a cannabis-infused dinner, a 5-course meal that looked absolutely delightful, and I was going to be helping him out at it. And a week before the dinner was set to take place, Eventbrite, who was doing the ticket hosting for the event, canceled it on him. Why? Because it was in violation of community guidelines. Because weed is bad. And even though he's in Canada and it's perfectly legal in Canada, he still has to deal with these types of things. And this is something that weed people deal with all the time. And Eventbrite is based in the States. And so, of course, even though he read through their terms and conditions ahead of time, it didn't matter. A week before the event. And so now he's scrambling and having to deal with refunds and all the rest of it. So we're still a little ways off this widening legalization and regulation. Number 2, culinary innovation and fusion. Chefs and culinary experts are increasingly experimenting with cannabis as an ingredient, exploring its potential beyond traditional brownies and gummies. Expect to see more sophisticated and diverse options, including gourmet meals, exotic desserts, and a fusion of different culinary traditions that incorporate cannabis. Well, I'd say the future is now, because yes, there are many chefs out there who are experimenting with culinary cannabis as we speak in a lot of different culinary traditions, and it's super exciting to watch. The one cookbook that I got right now, the High Times Let's Get Baked book that I got for Christmas, has a lot of those influences in it. And it's so interesting because it is definitely beyond the traditional brownies and gummies. But I would also like to say that it's people like you and I where a lot of this innovation is happening too. Chefs, yes, and they often have a platform of some kind so they can talk about what they're doing or a place in which to share these things with other people. But it's people like you and I who are experimenting in the kitchen where a lot of this is also happening. And I think that makes things more interesting when things are also happening in the home kitchen as well. So that's where a lot of innovation and fusion can be found. And in large part, that could be influenced by chefs that we're following and that we're interested in their work. But, if it's not happening in the home kitchen, is it even really happening? Number 3, consumer education and sophistication. As consumers become more knowledgeable about cannabis, its effects, and its culinary applications, there will be a growing demand for high-quality, well-crafted edibles. This knowledge will drive a preference for edibles that are not only effective, but also cater to specific tastes and dietary requirements. And I think we're already starting to see a lot of this as well. People who are into edibles are looking for better quality edibles on the market. And then you also have people like you and I, once again, who have a demand for high quality, well-crafted edibles. So they're making them themselves. Because when you make them yourself, you know exactly what's going into them. You can buy the best quality ingredients that you can afford to buy. And you know what you're doing. And of course, they're typically going to be full spectrum because you're using the whole plant. You're not just using a distillate or some kind of extracted THC or CBD component. And I think I'm seeing in the market as well, some of the most interesting edibles are ones like Rose Edibles, for instance. That was a consumer brand that is doing things differently and catering to that high quality, well-crafted edible. I'll link to that episode in the show notes because I think what they're doing is beautiful. But also you're seeing a lot of edibles on the market now that are using like rosin instead of just distillate. And that is because there's this growing demand for something that's more robust as a high than the extracted distillate type edibles that you see on the market. People are looking for new solutions that will give them more of what they want. Number 4, a focus on health and wellness. Cannabis cuisine will likely align more with cannabis and wellness trends. This could include the creation of edibles with specific health benefits, such as stress release or sleep aids, and a focus on organic, non-GMO, and natural ingredients. I think we're kind of already there. Cannabis just naturally lends itself to a focus on health and wellness because it allows you to deal with a multitude of health issues, whether it's, stress relief or sleep aids or something more serious, if you will, while also allowing many users to get off of pharmaceuticals that usually have a longer list of side effects than cannabis does. So some of this stuff, sorry, ChatGPT, this sounds a little more like marketing because I think it's been known for a long time that stress relief and sleep aids and that sort of thing are things that cannabis can help people with and has for a long time. And that's why people are turning to it. Now, of course, focus on organic or non-GMO natural ingredients. I think you're already starting to see that out there. There are options for that out there on the market. And once again, if you're making your own, you are often able to choose those organic, non-GMO natural ingredients to go in your own edibles. The beauty of making your own. It gives you the power. Take the power back, people. Maybe that should be the theme of this particular episode. Number 5, technological advances in extraction and infusion. The future will bring more sophisticated methods of THC and CBD extraction and infusion. This technology will allow for more precise dosing, consistency, and flavor profiles, enhancing both the safety and enjoyment of cannabis edibles. I can't totally comment on this one because I'm not at the forefront of extraction technology. But I do see a lot of this in the realm of beverages, and I have spoken to a number of people in the beverages space and how technology is enabling a whole lot of innovation in drinks that are available in the cannabis market. Full spectrum, I think, still reigns supreme though, and sophistication, the precise dosing, of course, is always a good thing when it comes to edibles. Consistency, you definitely want that. So that does enhance the safety and enjoyment of edibles that you're buying off the legal market. But sometimes I think we're already there and it's hard I can't really comment too much on that. So I think I'll leave it at that. Number 6, microdosing and personalization. There will be a growing interest in microdosing where small amounts of cannabis are used to achieve desired effects without overwhelming psychoactivity. Personalized edibles tailored to individual preferences and desired outcomes could become more prevalent. And I think we're seeing personalization in a lot of other markets. I don't know if you've heard of Prose shampoo, but that's one that comes to mind. Do they advertise a lot on podcasts? I think they do. As a result, I listen to a lot of podcasts, so I've heard their ads a lot. But why not here? That could be very interesting. I'm not really sure how that would look because I think, for microdosing and personalization, you just have to look for edibles that are at a dose tailored to your own specific tolerance. And those do exist. You can go out and buy edibles that are 1 milligrams, 2 milligrams, 5, 10. And now, of course, in Canada, if you're going to go beyond that, you're probably going to have to turn to the legacy market or once again, make your own. But it is possible to find that. But I think the personalization could be very interesting. I think actually that's what it was. I think a lot of this microdosing and personalization comes with growing consumer education because people are becoming more aware of how tolerance can affect their experience, the potency. And so they're looking for personalization already because they're becoming more educated about how edibles work in their body and how smaller doses often suit people better. So that seems to make a lot of sense to me. Integration into everyday dining. As societal norms continue to evolve, we may see cannabis being incorporated more regularly into meals, much like herbs and spices are used today. And if you're listening to this show, you're already here or you're almost there, probably because you're using cannabis, an edible cannabis in your daily routine already. Maybe you're not putting it into your meals regularly, but you might have the vat of olive oil or coconut oil at the ready all the time. But the future is now. Number 8, sustainability and ethical sourcing. As with other areas of cuisine, there will be an increased focus on sustainability and ethical sourcing of cannabis and other ingredients used in edibles. So I'd really love to believe this, but from what I can see, there's still such a push towards corporate weed. So unless we can find ways to make it easier for craft cannabis and small edibles companies to compete with the big boys, the big gals, that's going to be difficult. Also, this was already the case in many communities before Prohibition drove it underground. Someone once told me that cannabis was used like basil in Thailand. It was used frequently in cooking, and it would be really beautiful to see a return to traditional uses of cannabis, culinary cannabis in communities where it's existed for a long time. And I'm not sure we're going to find that under existing capitalist structures, but I could be proven wrong. People are definitely interested in more sustainable and ethical sourcing, so perhaps people voting with their dollars when they go into the dispensaries and not finding what they want could shift these larger companies into doing this because they have to, because that's what people want. Again, I bring up Rose Edibles because it was a recent interview, but also because they do believe in sustainable and ethical sourcing of all the ingredients they put in their edibles. And so when you support companies like that, you're supporting this kind of value that companies are bringing to their edibles. And once again, if you are making your own edibles, you can sustainably and ethically source whatever ingredients go into what you have so you can make your own edibles how you want to make them. And if that's important to you, then you can find ways to make that happen. Number 9, digital integration and e-commerce. The role of technology in marketing, selling, and educating about cannabis edibles will grow. E-commerce platforms, apps for dosage tracking, and virtual cooking classes may become more prominent. Well, anything that pushes forward the agenda of educating the public, I'm all for. 100 years of prohibition have left us a little lost and confused. And there's still so much stigma around cannabis. Sometimes I forget about how much stigma there is. And then you run into people who are like, ew, gross kind of thing. And maybe not ew, gross, but they just don't understand it. There's still a ton of misconception around what a cannabis user looks like and a lot of other things surrounding cannabis use and what it can do for us, our communities, and the planet. And I'm not as excited about more marketing and selling for obvious reasons, because a lot of the times this is coming from huge companies that are, looking for ways to steal our attention. And sometimes I'm tired of being marketed to or being sold to, even though sometimes I realize I participate in that a little bit myself. So that's not totally lost on me, but there's a time and a place, of course. And there are tons of small, medium-sized businesses who are doing really cool things, who are helping the cannabis community, educating the public, and just bringing things to the market that fall under some of these other categories, like, sustainability and ethical sourcing and some of these other things. So those are the companies I want to support. That's what I want to see more of, because I feel like we have enough marketing and selling as it is. Let's focus on some of the other positives, like the education and dose tracking and cooking classes and that sort of thing that makes it easier for people to access education and their edibles and their cannabis. Last but not least, number 10, global influence and expansion. As different companies explore and change their cannabis policies, there will be cross-cultural influences in cannabis cuisine, leading to a rich global tapestry of edible offerings. Well, that sounds nice, doesn't it? I think we need more acceptance of cannabis in more places, and if only the US would legalize federally, and if Germany could get their shit together, perhaps that would usher in a whole new world of acceptance, because those two places, those would be game changers. I mean, Canada is leading, but it's not a market like the US, where if the US were to legalize, that would be huge. And Germany, of course, is like that gateway to all of Europe, because I like the sounds of a rich global tapestry of edibles offerings. And it's like, are we talking world peace here? Could cannabis usher in a whole new era of acceptance amongst people? That does sound nice. And perhaps a really good place to end. In summary, the future of cannabis cuisine is likely to be marked by greater sophistication, diversification, and integration into mainstream culinary practices driven by advancements in legalization, consumer education, and culinary innovation. And I would like to suggest, my friends, that we're already there for a lot of this stuff. We're already there. And it shows like this show, Bite Me, the show about edibles, or perhaps some of the other shows that you're listening to, whether they're about edibles or cannabis or education, science. That's already ushering in the future of cannabis. And of course, the future of cannabis cuisine is what I'm particularly interested in, and you are probably too, and you are at the forefront of this future because you're making cannabis edibles in your own kitchen. And that, my friends, is really going to change things, because when everyone's doing that in their own kitchen, it's impossible to ignore. And once again, you have total control. When you're making your own edibles, you have control. If you're growing your own weed and making your own edibles, you are taking the power back, my friends, from large corporate companies that would try and take it from you, because they don't want you making your own shit. They want you buying stuff. And I don't know, I just like making my own stuff too. There's a whole bunch of reasons why people do it, many of which I mentioned in this episode, but it feels good to do something for yourself and to put a little bit of that power back in your own hands. So if you enjoyed that episode, please consider sharing it with someone that you care about. Maybe somebody who's thought about making their own edibles, or perhaps growing, or something to that effect, or just learning more about cannabis. You can always talk to me. I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these points. If you have an urge to share what you think, please do. Never hesitate to reach out to me. You can reach me by email, the podcast hotline, or DM me on Instagram. That's the social platform I'm most active on. You can also stay up to date with news and events and other fun things with the email newsletter. And of course, consider using the products and services on the Marge Recommends page, because that helps to support the show. And once again, like I mentioned earlier, join the Bite Me Cannabis Club. Before we end it though, back to the trivia question you thought I'd forgotten. In 1986, Carlton Turner, President Reagan's drug advisor, suggested that marijuana can make you dumb, sterile, gay, or crazy. The answer is marijuana can make you gay, according to Carlton Turner in 1986. Thank God we've come a long, long way, my friends. I'm your host, Marge, and until next week, stay high. Are you tired of trying edibles that are inconsistent in strength and flavor? Attempting to figure out your tolerance? Do you want to take control of your edibles experience and find the optimum combination of factors that results in the best outcome? If so, this edibles journal is perfect for you. The Bite Me Edibles Journal provides a convenient and organized way for you to track and record your edibles experience, whether it's homemade edibles or store-bought. It includes 48 fillable pages. It's sized 8.5 by 11 for plenty of writing space, includes information on calculating the potency of homemade edibles, and it was created by an edibles expert. Whether you're a seasoned edibles enthusiast or just starting out on your cannabis journey, the Bite Me Edibles Journal is an essential tool for anyone interested in enjoying their edibles to the fullest. Take control of your high life with this convenient and helpful resource. Add it to your Amazon cart today. Tap the link in the show notes.